Good morning, everybody, or good day. I don't know why I bother saying good morning or good afternoon, because I know that when other people watch this, it's going to be a totally different time of day. But since you're here with me at the moment, good morning. It's 7:19 a.m. It's almost time to start work. And I just wanted to make a quick video about kids. Out of all the videos I've made, I mention my kids once in a while, but I don't generally expound on it because I feel like parents that talk about their kids, everybody just rolls their eyes. Because I know I do, and I love it when I have other parents and other friends that talk about their kids, say how they're doing and everything, but it's the ones that talk their kids up like they're just these perfect children, and maybe they are, but those are the ones that make society kind of wary of talking about kids. But I'm not here to talk about my children. I'm here to talk about raising children, because that's another issue I never want to tackle, because it's such a personal thing, and nobody, and this is just like the one I made about religious tolerance. It's parental tolerance. Is that nobody has a right to tell another person how to properly raise their kid. Although there are obvious, let's say if I were to compare it to religion, obviously as long as your religion is harming no one, there's nothing wrong with that. But if your religion requires sacrifice of humans, then that's a different story. And if you're a bad parent, you're basically sacrificing your children to the ways of a warped, twisted society. And it's an innocent thing usually. Parents don't intend to harm their children. They want their children to be able to fit in, and they want their children to be able to be part of something that is better than what they did. And if a parent had a really good life, then they want their children to have one too. If a parent had a really bad life, then they want their children to have a good life. So no matter what, most parents want their kids to be happy. But what kind of things do you teach your kids? And that's one of those up in the air issues. I've heard people argue back and forth about how it's very important to not program your kids to society. So I try very hard not to. For example, when my child asks me a question, rather than give him the answer that I've been told, I let him think about it on his own. Now, a perfect example of this is my mom was over the other day, and Grandma watches them on Fridays when I'm working. And I got home and she said, we were talking jokes with the kid, and she said, "Emerson, why did the chicken cross the road?" And he sat there for about 5 seconds and he said, "Because there were no cars coming." And I was just like, yes, you got it. This is the way he sees it. You don't say no to get to the other side. He doesn't get that yet. You just laugh and say you're right. You're looking both ways. The kid's learning, and that's the most important thing. Is we don't have to tell the same fairy tales we were told, but at the same time, we can't tell our children that, well, you have the power to do whatever you want in life, and you don't have to make any effort, and you don't have to go to school. You can learn other ways. It becomes very difficult. For example, the homeschooling thing becomes a big issue. I know a lot of people who say they'd never send their children to public school if they had kids. And then they have kids, and then it becomes a completely different situation. And I know that there are some families out there that are able to stay home with their kids to, homeschool them. But for the rest of us who wish we could, and I still might, I haven't decided yet, but there are a lot of factors to whether you should homeschool your kid or send them to public school. I mean, the public education system is getting destroyed, but at the same time, there are still good schools out there. For example, I lived in Oregon, and I moved from Portland up to Vancouver, right across the bridge. And the only reason was, besides we found a house there, the reason we looked for a house there was because the schools were better. And since we've been there, they've built 2 new schools. The school that he went to was brand new. My other son, he just graduated high school. And I know that you can't rely on the education system to teach your child. what you can do is ask them what they've learned and help them expound on what's important. But some parents may say math isn't that important to you. You won't need big math like that. And if the kid wants to be a rocket scientist, he's going to need it. And so we have this window of education with our children when they're a certain age. And if you miss that window, you can still teach them, but they miss a lot of the connections. Synapses are developed in the first 5 years of life. And I think a lot of parents miss it because they're not prepared to be parents. And I'll tell you what, nobody's ever prepared to be a parent. I've talked to so many people who say, oh, I want to have kids, but it's just not the time yet, or I'm not stable. And I always tell them the same thing that I was told. You'll never be stable. You will never be stable. Because there's families that are making $400,000, $500,000 a year who think they're not stable enough to have kids yet. And it's nothing to do with money. It has to do with the stability of them as people, you see? So, would you rather be a financially stable parent that's never there with your kids, or a mentally stable parent that can't give your kids all the things that they want? And that's to each for his own to decide. But I love my children so much, and they are the world to me. And anybody out there who is, maybe on the fence or has young children, I urge you to put forth the most that you can, because you have to learn to let your children teach you and teach them at the same time. It's a mutual thing. But you cannot program your children. And likewise, you can't let your children program you to give them what they want. There's too many easygoing parents that let their kids push them over, and there's too many hardcore parents that don't let their kids have an inch. There's a balance there, of course, and I'm not going to say I'm a perfect parent. If I get on the computer for even a minute, sometimes while my kid's watching cartoons, I'll go in and make a video really quick. I only do it when I have the time and he's busy. But if I come back out and I'm typing something on the computer, answering, some comments or just searching for something, and he comes up to me and he's pulling on me saying, Papa, let's play, I go play. And that's the thing. I don't say, no, I'm busy, because how busy are we really? And what kind of things make us so busy that we can't spend time with our children? And I know as a parent, we justify everything we can to ourselves. It's kind of like when people are in a bad relationship with a partner and they don't admit it to themselves, and they just go along pretending like everything's okay and thinking that that's just the normal way things are. And then when people see them from the outside, they say, whoa, why don't you guys get divorced? You're fighting all the time, and that's just what they're used to. They think that's normal. It's not normal. Especially parents that fight in front of their children. To me, it's disgusting. It's disgusting. Even yelling at each other or cursing just quickly, it is totally wrong, and it's one of the most morally wrong things that a parent could do in front of their children. Because if you want your children to grow up in a world of peace and assistance and helpfulness, they can't spend the youth in the first part of their life hearing people fight. That is all they're exposed to. And while you may go out in the rest of your life and go out to the work and the rest of your world and everything's fine, and you see the calmness, the kids, all they know is the hate. And so don't fool yourself if you have a bad relationship. And likewise, you have to do the same thing with children. Do not grow adapted or accustomed to ignoring them. Your children are your life, and your children are going to be there for you only if you're there for them. But never raise your children with the intent of having them assist you as you're older. Like some families in the farming days, back in the day when everybody lived out in the country, and it was easier to raise kids for help on the farm, and children were more of a workforce, but they were well loved, and the families were together, and that's what was important. You could have a family of 10, 15, and as long as everyone loved each other, that's fine. My view is that anything over 4, 5 kids becomes, you can't raise your children properly with all the love that is necessary. That's just my opinion. But plenty of Mormon families do it, and they raise good kids, I guess. And I'm not here to tell anybody what's right or wrong, but just what I've noticed about children is that they're fucking smart. They know a lot more than we give them credit for. Their minds are running much faster than ours, and when they say something, you better listen, because it's probably important. Not always, maybe, but even though it's not important to you, it's important to them. So, I love children. And until I had kids, I didn't really understand the love, the bond, but at the same time, I started thinking about the Michael Jackson thing the other day. I shouldn't even throw this in here because I should probably get shit for it, but how the media had twisted Michael Jackson into this pervert, and I bit into it. Everybody bought into it, you know. But I'm not saying that it's wrong or that he wasn't into children sexually. I'm not saying that he was or wasn't. All I'm saying is that when you look at it from a different perspective, from that love that people can have for children, and a person like Michael Jackson, who was raised without real love in his family, and to understand, to finally find a bond between him and children, and being such a famous person he was, I could see how that could be totally twisted out of proportion. I'm not declaring it is or isn't. I'm just saying being with children is such an energizing, loving feeling that being around kids is a high. And not everybody likes that high, but I can understand how a person who has nothing else going for them in life, that they would grasp onto children, you know, if they don't have someone else in their life. So I just started looking at things from a different perspective, you know, how important children are to us. And I don't even know why I brought up the Jackson thing, but it was just a good example of how the media can make someone who's rich and famous look like a pervert because they like children. And, you know, I'm not here to declare one way or another, but I just know how the system warps things. And we expect our children to be numbers. We expect our children to be part of a system that doesn't work for us. And we expect our children to continue the system because it's what other people tell us to raise our children to do. And it's time for that to stop. And you can't raise your kids to not do anything with their lives, but you have to raise your kids to think for themselves. So fate is in the hands of the individual, and you can assist your children with theirs. And but don't set their fate in stone for them. Let them set yours. Namaste.